What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Dusty, the Airstream trailer renovation restoration. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the end caps of installation to Airstream trailers. It's probably one of the most dreaded and fearful restoration renovation projects on Airstreams for most people. Just like for me, I thought it was going to be probably one of the most difficult projects, one that gave me the most fits and problems. And I can tell you, looking behind me as you see that first one done, I can tell you it's probably one of my most favorite projects so far in this entire restoration project, as well as definitely the most rewarding part of it. Stick around, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and we're going to make your life easy by giving you the full DIY tutorial and how to do the installation piece by piece on your end caps for your Airstream. All right, so the next part prior to installing the panels for end caps, we actually need to fill all of the gaps in between all of the foam blocks that we previously installed. And the way we're going to do that is by utilizing thermal insulation or blown-in insulation, which you can find at your local hardware store, and I will have where I got mine linked into the description below. For that, we're going to use Super 77 spray. We'll spray all in between here. We will then place it by hand, putting it all in there, and then from that position we will then talk about how we get our center line from here so that our lines are even from here all the way around, matching it uniform perfectly so it doesn't look like one side's higher than the other and everything's nice, crisp, clean lines. So with that, we're going to switch over quickly to time-lapse. We're going to start installing this insulation in between all the gaps, fill that up, and then we will come back over, do the explanation of how we get where that total center line is all the way around, and then start installing and clecoing panels in place ahead of riveting. Our goal obviously is to go from there to here, and if you look, you can see how that line is just matched perfectly all the way around. The lines up here, even with the rivets, are all perfect and uniform, utilizing that rivet tool for your depths of distances and perfect alignment. So that alignment tool definitely came in handy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out my video on rivet alignment tool. It's a really good explanation on how we can, even us as amateurs, look like professionals perfectly with that tool. It is probably one of the best tools to have if you're doing the restoration renovation on Airstreams. Alright, so when we're trying to find the center line to the end caps, it is in my opinion that you don't measure from the ground up, but you utilize a metal ruler and you start from underneath the bottom of the frame, and with a level you get a straight line that comes all the way across to overlap. Once you trace that line out, you'll do the same thing on the second side. From there, you can take your ruler, if you've overlapped your panels on this rib, if you haven't and you measured it flush with it, then the depth of this rib for where the cleat goes and eventually rivets will install to is actually 3/4 inches wide. If you do have some of your panels that did overlap, then what you would do is you would just put your ruler to the back of this, and whatever the outer edge of the panel lines to, then you would draw just little lines in periodic places. From there, you would then use that same straight edge ruler and draw those straight lines and follow it to your other straight line for where your other panel side would start, and that's where you would start your straight edge for your end caps. Then from there, what you can do is measure from the ground up to this line to get both sides distances to see how close to level you were in case you need to make any adjustments. For me, on this particular side, from ground to this top line was actually 54 1/8 of an inch. So I need to drop it 1/8 to make it level to here, which is 54 inches from ground to the top of this line. So obviously it's a really quick way to do that, and I was only obviously 1/8 of an inch off, which is a quick, easy adjustment for when I put this panel in. I will just drop it. From there, we would use that ruler and start measuring the overall distance from line edge to line edge. And what I found was I came up with a total of 111 inches overall. Now from that 111 inches, there's 4 overlaps on your end caps. From the first panel to the second, you start with this. This is the first overlap, second overlap, third overlap, fourth overlap. We skip the center overlaps. So then you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 overlaps, obviously, from this top edge of this panel. With those overlaps, I've come up with 9.5 inches of distance for each panel on this outer edge line, meaning that from the bottom edge of your very first panel to the top edge where the second panel would overlap, this overall distance is going to be 9.5 inches on each panel. So as we place the first panel in and Cleco it all in, when we start to align the second edge of this and we put it on here, we know that our distance will only be 9.5 inches on each panel, which will then give us a nice perfect uniform for that center piece. Now most people on these center panels, I don't know why, but they use the full width of their panels, especially here at the bottom, which really shortens up the distance here and it doesn't give it a uniform flow. So I will show you exactly what we're going to do to measure and trim this to continue kind of that contoured curved line on each one of these panels so that those distances absolutely look perfect, those lines are absolutely crisp, and the rivets are perfectly spaced and installed. So with that, we need to jump back over here before we install these panels for this last and front end cap. We need to go back and start installing that thermal insulation, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So like as always, I'm going to switch this over to time-lapse, install all of that thermal insulation by spraying with the Super 77 spray, installing all that insulation by hand, and then from there we will start installing the panels piece by piece and continue on until all 11 of them are installed properly, riveted, and then from there we will remove the plastic and then do a full walkthrough of all of the interior panels fully installed, ready to go for the final part of the finished interior. So with that, like as always, we're going to switch this over to time-lapse and continue on with this work. So here we go. All right, now that we've got 4 of these end cap panels in, the way it starts really is where that first line was drawn right here. Obviously we just line this edge up at 90 and then we follow it to the line that we had previously drawn on here for the overlap. Then of course I'm spacing them every 2 inches and then following that line all the way down. Now when you lay that first panel in, it's not going to follow your straight line, obviously, because of the contour. It's going to drag it down. So what I did was I brought my ruler and I measured from the inside, so I knew where that depth was, so then when it overlapped right here, I could measure from the ruler edge from this bottom piece up, knowing where that line would start. So I drew my line there, and I just drew my straight line from here all the way back to that edge, and then of course cut it out, and then it actually fit perfectly right in. Same thing with the second one. I lined it up to that edge on top where we measured for 9.5 inches from the bottom of the first panel to the top edge, drew a line. We laid that panel right on top. Same thing up to that line that we had drawn with that overlap. Placed it in. Same thing, drew the line, bringing it to the top edge of this window. Now, you'll notice on this side so far, I have these two in here, and that's because we're going to pull them. These are the only 2 panels that actually overlap on these windows. These ones currently right now behind it are overlapping as well, and we're going to trim that excess off so we don't have a bunch of stacks of the aluminum panel on this corner edge right here. We want to try to limit it to just 1 to make everything flush and uniform. So the reason why I drew these lines is so this one's going to follow, and then this one will come up like this, so it makes this window follow as well. And then from there, I'll pull these out, trim this excess off behind it, which is behind here, and then we can place these back in here. We'll put that 5th panel in over here, and then we're going to go to this side and do those 5, leaving the center for last. So we're going to go ahead and switch this back over to time-lapse. I'm going to go ahead and start trimming all of this, trim everything else up, get this in place. We'll put the 5th panel in, and then we'll switch over to the other side. So here we go. All right, so when we're talking about installing this first panel, obviously we have the line that was underneath this panel originally, which is the straight line, and you can see how this starts to curve when it follows the contour of the trailer. And we actually need to make that line straight to follow. So the best way I think is to follow the inside of your window frame, go to the top inside, just like that on this side, and you can see as we get it to the very top, come on, there we go. Then we would mark that line right there, and then we would just come straight up and follow the straight edge of this inside frame, mark it on the ruler, and then make our mark there on the top of this ruler going horizontal. From there, obviously this is a flexible ruler, we would then flex it all the way back to our straight line and then trace that, and then that would be our straight line to the top of this frame itself of the window, so that we get it to look uniform like we do on the other side. Once we have that in, then we can go business as usual and continue on. You can see that I'm doing an overlap, so I'm measuring just about a 1/2 inch over from our line, which this outside line that we've traced is to the back edge of that rib that overhangs where you have to rivet. So obviously we're going to rivet through here, but I have that nice overhang, and we'll follow the lines all the way down. So it's just this one solid flow going all the way across. So let's go ahead and switch back over to time-lapse. You can watch me go ahead and start getting the lines drawn out, starting on this window frame, making it go straight across, then we'll pull it off, cut it, and then we'll put all the rivets, or not rivets, but clecos in and go from there. And just like that, the end caps are officially complete. All of the interior panels officially installed. They're riveted. And now all that's left on Dusty is the actual finished interior work. Guys, I thank you for all the continued support you've been giving me, all the continued questions you ask, all the pointers that you're asking for my opinions on, all of the comments, all the feedback that you've been giving me. I can't thank you guys enough, and I just ask that you continue to support that. If you haven't already, go down, hit the subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with your family and friends. And until next time, as always, this is Danny signing out.